Hi, my name is Kahn. I'm a volunteer with RSVP and Volunteer Solutions. I've been volunteering for about a year now, and I love the volunteer work that I'm able to do because it gives me flexibility and working with my schedule. And I hope you'll tune into the podcast and help come and volunteer.
Welcome to the RSVP Northern Virginia Weekly Podcast. This is Rob Payne, your host, Marketing and Outreach Specialist with RSVP Northern Virginia. RSVP Northern Virginia is a volunteer program specifically designed for those 55 years young and greater in the Northern Virginia area. Each week, we feature one of our fantastic volunteers or nonprofit partners. So sit back and enjoy, and thanks for tuning in. Hello, this is Rob Payne with RSVP, and welcome to another RSVP Northern Virginia podcast. This afternoon, we are on a sunny February day. We have the pleasure of speaking with Kahn. Karen is an RSVP volunteer who also specifically through RSVP volunteers with Volunteer Solutions. Karen, thanks for coming in today.
You're welcome.
Karen, tell me a little bit about how you first got involved with RSVP.
So I lost my permanent full-time job a couple years ago. I managed a mortgage fraud department at one of the large banks in the area. So while I was looking for new work, I was going through to some of the job fairs and stuff, and I wanted to find something where I could, volunteer some of my time while looking for another full-time job. So at one of the job fairs, I saw a table for Volunteer Solutions. They had some information there and, how you can get involved. So I got the information, got home, looked on the website. So I saw the Volunteer Solutions and I saw the link to the RSVP. Uh-huh. And I thought, well, the RSVP sounds interesting because I'm the age qualified for that. Right. And what interested me with that is you can kind of pick and choose what you wanted to volunteer depending on what time you had available, and so you didn't have to commit to something like so many hours, so many days a month or whatever to do that. So that sounded interesting to me. And then I also thought by volunteering with each organization, it might give me an opportunity to obtain some contacts to possibly find another full-time job.
Okay.
So that's how I got involved in it.
Now, so you came here, and I'm assuming you went through an orientation with, obviously.
I did the orientation. They did an online orientation.
Oh, okay. At that point, yes, yeah. Which I don't think we do anymore.
Okay.
Because but that was and then you went to work. You volunteered specifically for Volunteer Solutions. And you volunteer, I want to make sure I get this name right so I don't butcher it, the DFS, Department of Family Services, Fairfax area on the aging. And of course, Volunteer Solutions is part of the area on the agencies. Right. So specifically, what do you do as a volunteer for the Department of Family Services?
So what I do, I'm in their financial exploitation task force. Uh-huh. And when I actually signed up to find volunteer work, I wanted to find something where I could use my fraud investigations background to help either to prevent elder abuse, financial elder abuse, and or financial abuse of military people. Okay. So it was about a year ago or so when I got connected up, and I worked with a couple different people, and one of them I think was Tavna, who I think is with Volunteer Solutions, or they connected me up with Tavna, and so she got in touch with me because she heard I was looking for something where I could volunteer to help elder abuse, financial elder abuse. And she said they were actually putting together a task force. So I thought, oh, that's great. And she said, they were just developing it, and they were probably not be able to be ready to go with it until about April or May of last year.
Just last year. Okay, great.
So eventually, probably around May or June, they started getting things together and started setting up monthly task force meetings. So I've been going to those task force meetings, and it's very interesting. I love it. I'm one of the few volunteers on that task force. Right. There's also some law enforcement people on the task force who are employed. They're like from Fairfax County and the FBI. And then other social workers are there and other people with the Department of Aging.
It's funny you mentioned this because I actually attended a sort of a similar, it was on electronic fraud and banking fraud at the county center about a year ago. It's a growing problem. And again, I want to get this exactly right. The fraud, the electronic fraud. Say it again because I don't want to butcher this up. The
financial exploitation. Especially among seniors. Right.
It's a real big growing issue. So specifically, what does your task force hope to do?
Well, what the task force does is we meet on a monthly basis. We have a meeting coming up next Monday, and the person that coordinates the meeting, she has caseworkers come in to present cases. Where the worker has been working with a client where they've either received a tip or are aware somehow that they believe that client has possibly been a victim of financial exploitation. Right. So they bring in the case to present it, to try and get some ideas of where they can go with it, what they should do with it, how can they help their client. So, I'll provide information. Since I have over 25 years in the mortgage and banking industry, great. So I provide some of that information on how they can work with some of the banks or mortgage companies and credit, what they can do to try and prevent them from being victims of someone using their credit. And then the law enforcement people that are there, they may decide, well, this is a case they want to take on and look at, so they'll get involved and they'll exchange contact information. So you have everybody
in the same room.
Yep.
Are there any, when you guys have your discussions, for the folks listening today, do you have any specific recommendations that people can follow that might reduce their opportunity to be the victim of this type of fraud?
Well, one of the key prevention tactics, especially with the recent credit breaches, is to really know your credit and understand your credit. And if you can, put either a fraud alert on your credit report or a freeze on your credit. Now, freeze, the credit bureaus, you have to do that with all three credit bureaus. Some of them will charge you a fee to put that on, to put a credit freeze on. And then if you want to go out and get new credit, if you need a new credit card or buy a car or something, you have to then remove that freeze. And then put it back on if you want to have it on. If you do a fraud alert, if you were truly a victim of fraud, you can put a fraud alert on that'll be on there temporarily for 90 days. And then if you really were a victim of fraud, you can provide your documentation, such as a police report or whatever evidence you have to show that you were a victim of fraud. And then that will stay on your credit report. And you only have to notify one of the credit repositories. They will notify the other ones. So that's
the difference there is you have to really have been a victim.
You have to have been a victim, right?
We were chatting yesterday on another program about with one of our other volunteers who works down at New Hope Housing, and she had counseled a client down there a few years ago who had almost lost everything because he or she, I can't remember if it was a man or woman, was a victim of identity theft. So it's a serious problem, and like you said, seniors are usually the top of the list for targets.
Because they usually generally have the money that they've built up over their life savings that they've built up, and so people know that, and they know their credit's traditionally really good, so they can steal their name and identity to go out and get new credit by using that person's identity. Another prevention tool is a company I signed up for LifeLock, and there's a couple other companies that do similar to what LifeLock does, and they'll monitor your credit for you. So I didn't want to have to constantly be monitoring my credit, because I was also a victim of the Equifax breach and all that, and that could impact you for the rest of your life, because the information that they stole is information you can't change. It's your social security number, your name, your date of birth, all that information that is used to apply for credit. So I don't want to have to constantly monitor that. So I signed up for LifeLock, and they'll monitor and let me know if someone's either trying to obtain credit in my name, or if some transactions are suspicious transactions are happening on my bank accounts or whatever. That's so
great. Now, do you guys get into anything else like ATM card fraud or anything like that, or is that more of a physical thing, or you get more into the digital?
Well, the caseworkers will bring in whatever they believe might have impacted their client, as far as any kind of financial fraud.
That's great. So. And one final question on this specific portion of things. If someone listening feels that they may have been a victim of this fraud, is there a specific department in the county they should contact? Should they call Volunteer Solutions? Should they call? Is there any area of the agency could they be able to direct them to the right place? Or?
Well, if they're of the age where Adult Protective Services can step in, they can contact Adult Protective Services. Now, if they're not, retired or of that age, they should contact the police department and file a police report. And their financial institutions. Let the financial institutions know they think they've been a victim of fraud. The financial institutions generally will work with the client to try and protect them. And in some of the cases that were brought forward in the task force meetings, some of them I think were where the financial institutions alerted a caseworker that they thought someone, a client was being victimized. So,
and a lot of this stuff is going on and being implemented by folks in, I think we shouldn't use the word folks, but people who aren't even in this country. In Eastern Europe. And I remember from the one seminar I went to, that one of the police officers who was running it mentioned that one of the most frustrating things about this type of crime is that in a lot of instances, the people who are even convicted of it are back out on the street in a relatively short amount of time, because it's sort of regarded as I don't know what the proper term is, a white collar crime. And so you wreck somebody's life, you're back in 3 years. You do other things which really are less consequential, and you're in there long.
And someone can go into a bank and hold up a bank with a gun, and steal maybe $500. They'll be put in jail for several years. Where someone takes someone's life savings, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and perhaps not even spend a day in jail, or maybe a few months here and there. Although I think it's become such a huge issue, law enforcement and Department of Justice has really, I think, increased the penalties for it to try and deter it. But like you said, so many of the perpetrators are in foreign countries. Nigeria, and Nigeria's well known for perpetrating some of the scams. People from some of the
and they're smart people too. They're not dummies. Now, Volunteer Solutions, they serve a very specific clientele. Usually, always over the age of 60, is my understanding, and then adults over the age of 18 who have disabilities. So there is that special division, and just to give people a better idea what Volunteer Solutions is, it's a division of the Department of Family Services Adult and Aging Division, Neighborhood and Community Services and Health Department. But that's a long road. I should have bought some more gas before I went down that drive. But they do a lot of great things. But primarily, with the exception of that folks 18 over the age of 18 with disability, they mainly concentrate on people over the age of 60. Is that correct?
Right.
Have you been involved in any other volunteer activities outside of that? I mean, that probably sounds like it keeps you pretty busy.
It does. I mean, besides going in task force, I'll get calls occasionally from a caseworker asking, hey, can you take a look at something for me? Or, they'll call me and ask my, sort of a consultation that I'll volunteer to do for them.
That's great.
Now, I have done a couple other things through Volunteer Solution. I did the Senior Olympics.
Great. I happen to be on the board of the Senior Olympics, so that's
so
cool.
I did
that's
one
wonderful.
of the swimming event. I did that
Excellent.
one.
I probably took a picture of you. That's great.
Probably.
And the Olympics is, we just announced the new dates for the Olympics for 2018, September 15th. So we're thrilled about that. That's really good. And that's a big event because it takes over 100 volunteers and God knows how many places, 20-something locations across Northern Virginia. So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And that's a good point because I think, a lot of times when people get into a volunteer organization, whether it be RSVP or Volunteer Solutions, they think, oh my God, I'm going to have to make this gigantic commitment.
Right.
But you really don't, do you?
Right.
I mean, you have a little bit more of a regular commitment because you're on the task force.
Right.
But that's your choice, and then on top of that, if you want to jump in and do these one-day events, you're free to do that.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Have you taken advantage of any of the other things with RSVP, like the social events or meet and greets or anything like that?
I really haven't, because I do consulting work right now, contracting work.
Good. Okay.
So I've been pretty busy with that. So it's hard for me to get away for an extended period of time.
Well, I wanted to cordially invite you, and I know Emily from Volunteer Solutions is going to be one of our special guests there too, as we're having a Valentine's, February 14th, a Valentine meet and greet at a place called Overture at Fair Ridge. It's right out near Fair Oaks. And we're going to be making hundreds of Valentine Days cards for vets. So it'll be a great, great day, for anybody out there who's either currently a volunteer who's interested in learning more about what RSVP and Volunteer Solutions, because Emily will be there to discuss what they do also.
Okay.
Tell me, closing. What do you personally get out of volunteering? Why do you enjoy volunteering?
Well, for a couple of reasons. It gets me out of the house.
Okay, that's good.
And gets me some interaction with other people. Being on this task force, it kind of helps me keep up with what's going on in the fraud space, that financial fraud space, and especially with some of the law enforcement people on task force. They share what they're seeing, and so that helps me. I'm a certified fraud examiner and a certified anti-money laundering specialist. So I want to keep up with some of what's the current scams and stuff going on out there. So that helps me that way. And like I said, I kind of have a passion for trying to prevent the elder abuse, and then I've also been looking for something where I can help on the military side as well, because I've seen military people when they've been deployed overseas where their identity's been stolen by a family member or someone back home, and as they've obtained credit in their name, and kind of the same situation. But,
so I know I've heard that a lot of military folks, especially if you drive down around military bases, there seems to be those same day payday loan places, but it expands, which is sort of exploiting. Well, it is exploiting. It's not sort of, but that expands beyond that.
But it gives me the flexibility to, to sort of give back, and while I'm still doing some of my other work.
That's excellent. And you made a point earlier today, that early in our discussion, that volunteering can be a great way for seniors or anyone over the age of 55 who is either underemployed or unemployed like you said, develop new skills in some cases, improve the current skills they have, and just meet people and make contacts.
Right.
I mean, it's really a good thing for everybody.
Right.
You're helping people. You're helping yourself.
Right.
And I think that's I think it's a really good point that you made, because it's an aspect a lot of people don't think about, and a lot of times what Carly and Nadia before her, where Nadia was the volunteer specialist, was that they tried to look for things in people that maybe, and this doesn't apply to your case because you have a very pronounced talent, but they try to look for things in people that maybe haven't been fully developed, where it's a marketable skill. Right. So it's a really a great way to, and it beats the heck out of staying home and watching, Peggy Sue, or whatever, the Kelly Ripa, whoever. Nothing against Kelly Ripa. I love Kelly Ripa.
Well, and all the news stations now, and it's just it gets to be too much.
It is, and I think volunteering in general is such a positive thing. We do a lot of outreach in the community and talk to a lot of newspapers, and there's one newspaper, well, all of the newspapers, two in particular, the Connection papers, and then the Zebra down in Alexandria, and they thrive on positive community news. And so I think people want to hear good news, and people want to hear about things helping. One final question for anyone out there who might be over the age of 55, or a lot of people hopefully listening to us who are sort of on the bubble there. Why is it important for seniors to volunteer?
Well, I think to sort of stay engaged, to be able to get out of the house, meet some other people, have some social interaction. I think you lose something when you don't stay in contact with other people. I think it's really important.
That's a great point.
And just to kind of keep your mind active and, keep yourself, involved. I think that's important.
Those are all great points. And Karen, I want to first thank you for all the work that you've done for RSVP, for Volunteer Solutions, and to help folks avoid fraud, which is such a very critical thing. And it's going to be probably for a long, long time.
Oh, it is.
Forever, probably. And we appreciate your time. We appreciate everything you do. And we appreciate you helping us get the word out, because that's a very important thing, so more people can take advantage of this program and help other people support our nonprofits. And I also want to thank you for coming in this afternoon.
Oh, you're welcome.
Making the trek from out in western Fairfax County to Fairfax City, where the RSVP headquarters are located, in Volunteer Fairfax headquarters. And then thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Sure. Okay. You're welcome.
It's been a pleasure. And this wraps up another RSVP podcast. Again, we hope that you will go to our website, www.rsvpnova.org. We've got some great events coming up, including our Valentine's Day vets for Valentine's cards for vets, and on March 7th we will be having a Wolf Trap National Park volunteer appreciation event, volunteer recognition event, where on March 7th at noon, and there'll be a picnic, weather permitting. If not, we'll go under the stage at Wolf Trap, and we'll also have a behind-the-scenes tour, and you'll learn more about some of the fantastic volunteer opportunities that are available at Wolf Trap. It's just an amazing place. So thank you again, and thanks for being on the show, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast. Be sure to join us every Wednesday for a new edition of the RSVP Northern Virginia podcast. For more information on RSVP Northern Virginia, to learn about some of our upcoming volunteer opportunities, please visit our website at www.rsvpnova.org. On behalf of Nadia Hoonan and Carly Hubicki, thank you again for joining us. And remember, RSVP Northern Virginia, matching great volunteers with great opportunities.